so what we're going to do is just kind of go this way, this way, this way. And so just to kind of start out, can you just say your name and spell it, and where you used to live and how you ended up in Denver?
Yep. My name is George Nagai, and I lived in Namachi from, I can't remember now. It's been a long time.
So can you say and spell your name?
George, Nagai, Nagai.
All right.
My name is Arita, Arita. I was born in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and my father worked for the Union Pacific Railroad. And when the war broke out, he was laid off, so we migrated south, eventually ending up in Denver, where I spent the rest of my time in Denver.
Oh, he has his own microphone.
My name is Hideo Hirose. I was born and raised in Denver, and lived here for my whole life except for the short time that I was in the service. So I saw Denver at an early age, and when Denver Japanese community was still maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people at the most.
Well, I think it's way less than 3,000 people now.
Really?
Yeah. But anyway, being from the interior, living in Denver, were you born in Denver?
Yes.
So being in the interior, you didn't have to go to the camp.
No.
So what was your growing up like before 1941?
Well, it may seem strange to say this, but it was a very comfortable life. My father was a physician, and I went to grade school, and there were a few Asian in my classes. And we all seemed to get along, no matter what race we were. We never had any problems that I can remember. And went to the old Manual High School, which was a tremendous mixture of different races, and we all got along so well. And it's kind of bothersome to me now as an adult to see all this rancor going on between races. So it's bothersome.
So what about after Pearl Harbor? How were things then? How old were you in 1941?
I was 11 years old at that time. Again, there was no rancor that I personally experienced, except to say that my father was to turn in his cameras, any weapons, and I remember he had a ceremonial samurai sword that he went to turn in, and apparently he was a friend of the district attorney, so the district attorney laughed at him and said, "Take those things home, you don't need to turn it in," and so we never had to turn anything in. That's the kind of Denver we were brought up in.
So
Hey, Claire.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Till go over there. We're right in the middle of
How are
a.
you?
We're right in the middle of interview now. So go over there.
Yeah, sorry.
give me a watch.
I'll get you a chair.
All right, we'll move over here. So how about yourself? You're from the interior, from Cheyenne.
Right.
Let's get them quiet now.
Thank you. That's okay.
Someone's in the hallway.
All right, so you're from the interior in Cheyenne and moved to Colorado. So what was your? Oh. So anyway, you're from the interior, born in Cheyenne and lived in Denver. So what was your growing up experience like before 1941? What was your kind of background being in Cheyenne?
Well, I don't remember a whole lot about being in Cheyenne. I was only 9 years old at the time. But I live on the west side of Cheyenne, in fact, 518 17th Street. And I remember as we migrated south, my dad did sharecropping in Brighton, and we lived in a one-room sort of a shack. And I had two sisters, so the five of us lived in this one-room sharecropper's shack. And then we moved to Adams City, where he did sharecropping in Adams City, and then we moved to Denver. So I went to, like Hideo, I went to grade school, middle school, and high school in Denver. And there were no real problems. The few problems I had were with the black people. I mean, they kind of, said Japs and, World War II and all that. And I figured at the time that it was the first time that they weren't the minority, we were the minority, that they realized. So I had a few encounters on the way to school and that sort of stuff. But overall speaking, there was no real problems.
How about after 1941? Did attitudes change towards you?
I would say a little bit, but not enough to have left a real impression on me.
Just as a side note, the Miyamoto seemed to be a big tie here because 518 West 17th Street was a bar that was called Johnny Baker's Bar, and it was a pool hall, it was a bar under various names, and there's a black guy, half Indian guy named Johnny Baker. He partnered up with Bill Miyamoto, old Bill Miyamoto, Nisei Bill Miyamoto, and ran this bar. And Bill and Ted and Tom took over that bar from the father afterwards, and actually closed it. And Urban Sprawl moved out to the north side of town and started a bowling alley on the north side. And also, the Miyamotos went to Manual High School. And maybe I don't know, not your classmates, but.
I think Johnny Baker's bar was on one block to the east towards downtown, because the block where I lived, there was a Japanese pool hall and a Japanese restaurant.
That would be my grandfather's pool hall
Western?
No, this was in Cheyenne.
in Cheyenne. That
Cheyenne.
was my grandfather's pool hall. It was owned by a guy named Masao Hosokawa to start out. And then there was a family called Kubota who got laid off after the war, worked for UP, and he took it over. My grandfather bought it in like early 50s.
Yeah, I remember the Kubotas having a pool hall. Well, Johnny Baker lived on one of the side streets. In fact, my grandfather lived on his property, George Sawamura.
So what's so weird is, I've been doing all this research about this neighborhood, and these are all these names that come up in the city directories and Ancestry.com and all that. So this is like, it's really odd and interesting. So what else can you tell me about West 17th Street when you were there? Was the fish market? What do you know about the fish market?
Fish market was on the corner of the 400 block. And, I don't remember too much more. Our neighbors were the Takahashis. I don't remember much more.
So did you know the City Cafe?
I'm sorry?
Did you know the City Cafe?
City Cafe was that's the cafe I mentioned. It was next to the pool hall, and the stairways going up to the Tani's hotel. Tawny's Hotel was upstairs.
So did you ever eat at the City Cafe?
Oh yeah. But I was a kid, I've eaten there a lot.
Any food stand out that you liked or remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah, when that place went out of business, it was a sad day for me because they make these, ever been downtown to the 20th Street Cafe
Yeah.
owned by a Japanese guy?
Yeah.
That reminds me of my grandmother's restaurant and the pork noodles and the egg rice with everything, all that. All right, so what about yourself? You went to camp. Where were you before you were sent to Camp Amache?
Sebastopol.
Where?
Sebastopol,
Where's that? Okay.
Northern California.
So do you remember your experience when you were sent to assembly and then
No,
don't remember any
I
of
was
that?
only 14.
What do you remember about being out in the middle of nowhere in Grenada?
All we did is have playmates. That's all I know. Just playmates. That's it.
So,
Did you play any baseball?
yeah, so how did you, first, how did you get out of Amache and where did you go after the war?
We went to Boulder. We had a friend there living. So I went to Boulder High and graduated.
So who was your friend in Boulder?
There, I don't know where they at now.
All right, well, let's get on to baseball.
Yeah.
So what was your baseball experience in at Amache?
I played for at DU. So I was one of the first Japanese to play college ball. That's all I know.
So were you a student at DU?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your experience at the Colorado. When were you there? At DU?
Colorado, I was there when the evacuation started. I was 14. So that's about all I know.
At Denver?
Yep.
So you were in college?
College.
And then evacuated?
Not college. I was high school yet. We then went to Amache High till junior. Then I graduated from Boulder High. That was senior. So
So did you play ball at Boulder High?
no, they didn't have baseball.
And so then you ended up, so tell me how you ended up from Boulder to DU.
Yeah. I got my Letterman jacket and everything else.
So
Yeah.
how did you decide to go to DU?
Friend. So that's about all I know.
And so how long did you play at DU?
2 years, I think. I can't remember.
So you have pictures of that?
I don't have a picture of the DU team.
Calvin Chai, you know him?
Calvin Chai was a football player and
Yeah, he and I,
from Hawaii.
yeah,
Played on
Hawaii.
one of the early Nisei teams.
Yeah.
All three of these guys played on the Nisei teams.
Yeah,
So that was
I
like
played
late
with
40s and
Calvin Chai.
early 50s.
All right,
Yeah.
so maybe you can talk a little bit about this Nisei team, that local Nisei team that you played.
No,
No?
no.
What was your baseball career like in Colorado?
Well, in the early 40s, I played in they used to call it the Old Timers League. It was kids league, and Hideo also played in the Old Timers League, remember? But that was all during elementary school, and then during junior high or middle school we played American Legion baseball. And then I ended up at Manual High School and I played 3 years at Manual High School. Then when I graduated from Manual, and for just 1 year I played with Denver Niseis. But I was actually the kiddie player for the Denver Niseis. I was probably the youngest kid on the team. I was just filling a number.
So the team was, I guess, going well before you joined it. So what, can you give maybe some background that you know about the team?
I don't know too much about the team. Like you said, it was going before I ever joined the team. I was on the team in 1950, the year we went to California and played in Fresno, was it? Played in Fresno. But that's the only year I played, because then I went into service at the end of 1950, so I only played the 1 year.
So do you ever recall any memories about your teammates and maybe what position you played?
Well, I was mostly second string catcher and probably fourth string pitcher or fifth. But as I said, I was the kid on the team, and I didn't really play that much.
All right, how about your experiences? What's your baseball experience in Colorado?
Well, I'd like to go back a little in the history. In the early 1940s, there was a juvenile court judge by the name of William Black, and he got a group of Denver businessmen together and formed this Old Timers League that Art is referring to, and it was a league that was divided into two divisions. A group of youngsters from age 9 or so till 11, and then from 12 to 16. So there were basically two divisions, and Judge Black oversaw this thing. And all told, I recall there was close to 50 plus of these young teams scattered all throughout Denver. And the team that I ended up playing for in the Old Timers League was sponsored by a liquor company called Ruler Lewin. I think they were a liquor distributor. And then the second year that I played, there was a Title Guarantee Company. That was another business venture in Denver. But prior to the Old Timers, I also had the I also played for the Young America League, which was prominent then too. We had a baseball team as well as a football team, and Art played in the Young America football also. From that, I played in high school.
And you're on the Nisei team?
Yes,
So you're teammates?
yes.
So what do you remember about this guy?
Yeah, he is a great big guy. A lot bigger than I was. I just remember him being a fullback for the high school football team. But
How about
he was a
yourself?
catcher, yes.
How about yourself? What position were you?
I was a pitcher,
Could he catch you?
yes.
And so we have any memories of any memorable games or memorable plays that we made?
Well, I would like to just reinforce one thing. Later on, when we started playing as the Denver Niseis, this was a conglomeration of the best Nisei players in the city of Denver. And George Nagai was our center fielder. And he had a fantastic arm for a relatively little guy. He could really throw that ball. And when I asked him at that time, how did you get to develop your arm strength like that? And he said that when he was growing up as a kid in Sevastopol, Apparently there were a lot of apple orchards around, and while everybody else was working, he'd pick up all these apples that were all over the place and practice throwing them, and that's how he developed his strength. And I have to believe him that he did that. So that's just an aside about George, but George did have one terrific arm from the center field.
So did any of your teammates ever go on to play professionally?
Well, we were actually a compendium of players from different leagues. There was a Northern Colorado Baseball League comprising of players from Brighton, Fort Lupton, Alt, even Cheyenne would come down, and Denver had two teams, the Denver Buddhist Church and the Denver Merchants. And I ended up playing for the Denver Buddhist Church team, and I think we were really a good team, and we had the luck of winning a couple of the tournaments that always took place around Labor Day. From that point on, I did go on and played in college. I went out for the CU Colorado baseball team. Excuse me. And
Who did you play with at CU? Anybody?
yes, there were.
Was it White or anybody who was famous?
Well, there were some famous people in high school that went on to play Major League Baseball.
Who would those people be?
There was a pitcher from West High School that went on to play Major League, and then the guy that I played with at CU, he also played major. He was a pitcher. He later became a lawyer, but he was a pitcher, and I got to know him pretty well.
All right. A few more questions. We'll see if you guys got any questions. But I'm just always curious about your growing up as young people in Denver. And so, do you have any recollections about the Granada Fish Market? Because that was at Amache, and then that guy moved it to Denver and opened it up. Did you ever have occasion to go to the Granada Fish Market in Denver?
Well, as a matter of fact, the owner of Granada Fish Market, Frank Torizawa, was, I guess he was the manager for the Denver Niseis when I played, 1950s. He was the businessman for the team. So I'm sure everybody was familiar with Granada Fish Market.
So that was your team sponsor?
I don't know if you'd say he was the sponsor, he was the businessman. I think the sponsorship was probably more community. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know where the finances came from.
Anything, but no recollections about being in the grocery store or?
Oh, I was in the Granada Fish Market a number of times, yeah.
And see, I was in there when I was really little, and I'm just curious about, because to me, what I remember it being is just like a freezer in the front, and some guy in the back who would give out fish to my grandmother. And I didn't know if it was much beyond that or whether or not that was it.
I remember it being more of a store than just a freezer.
Yeah.
So was it more like Pacific Market now, or was it?
Yeah, but it didn't have all the aisles. It was one big store, as I remember. Like one big room with counters all the way around it.
Well, George Nagai grew up in Granada Fish Market, didn't you, George?
Yeah.
So tell me about Granada Fish Market.
We was sponsored by them, softball team, Granada. That was it. I was too young.
I have the picture of the precursor. So Bean's Sports Shop was a softball team that I know Art played on for a year or two.
George played.
And then George also played on that team. But sponsorship-wise, the team became known as the Granada Sharks for 2 or 3 years after that.
Yeah.
So you played softball and baseball all at the same time, or were there different times in the summer
Yeah.
when you played one or the other?
Seems to me that it was pretty much same time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty much same time.
Just,
But everything same time.
you just played all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
That's all you did?
That's what we did to keep from working.
So then, do you have like lots of brothers and sisters, and did you have a strong family life when you were in maybe Cheyenne and then moving to Denver? How was your family set up?
Well, I had two sisters, both younger than I was, and we had a strong family life. My dad was Issei, my mother was Nisei, and yeah, we grew up in a family atmosphere.
So did they pass on traditions to you or the language?
Actually not. My dad spoke enough broken English that we didn't have to learn to speak Japanese, so I never just learned to speak Japanese. My mother, of course, was Nisei, so she was bilingual. So whatever we couldn't communicate with my dad, she would interpret for us.
And so what happened to the rest of your sisters and all their families? Are they still around?
My sister is still around. She became a registered nurse and moved to California, and she retired in California. She's now living in Mission Viejo. My middle sister was killed in an auto accident when she was a senior in high school. So there's just myself and my youngest sister.
So do you ever get back together or have a wider family, maybe cousins and whatnot?
I used to see her, I used to go to California, but I haven't in the past year or so, and she hasn't come out this way, so you know, I communicate with her probably once or twice a month on the phone, but we haven't seen each other for probably a year.
So how about you? What was your family like growing up? Yeah.
Well, I was the only child, so there was just three of us, my mother and my father. During my high school years, my father had a serious illness, and so it was very difficult times for me at that time, but managed to go to the University of Colorado and study pre-med, and then get into medical school and graduate from the University of Colorado Medical School. I chose a specialty when I graduated, and I picked orthopedic surgery because I like to do mechanical things, and this specialty was ideal for me. And I went through the orthopedic residency program at the University of Colorado. And I became a associate instructor at the university while I was still in practice. And I was able to join a private practice in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. And I had a total of 6 partners. And it was a very rewarding time for me. and I married my high school sweetheart, and that's where we are now.
So you're still in touch with any of your extended family, or?
Well, actually, my wife and we still are in touch with a lot of our high school the people that graduated with us. Very few Nisei people here, but a lot of our Hakujin friends we still see a lot of.
And how about you? What was your family like? How many you have brothers and sisters, and did you?
Just had two brothers. They both passed away. They went Army. One went replacement for 442nd, and they all went to Europe, Germany, in Italy. That's all I know.
And with the 442?
442, one was a replacement for 5.2nd Battalion, and one was a replacement for the Hawaiian, who was that? Go
100th.
for Broke. So he was a replacement there. That's about far as I know.
All right, so what do you see kind of as, you mentioned now all this turmoil that we're having around race and ethnicity and all that sort of thing. So what do you see as kind of the future based on kind of your looking backwards to World War II and all that stuff? How do you look forward?
Well, I think you, as a human being, you have to have faith. You have to have faith in the fact that the powers that be will sort things out, and eventually that we can all live in peace. I think that's going to be absolutely necessary, especially with new technology coming in. That's going to prolong life in general. So I haven't made up my mind yet whether prolonging life is a good thing or a bad thing, but time will tell.
All right. How about you? What do you see as the future based on kind of your past experiences and more from, Pearl Harbor?
Well, I'm not as optimistic as Hideo. I see race relations seemingly getting worse. I mean, I think they're worse today than they were 50 years ago, 60 years ago when we were going to school. But I don't know really what the future holds in terms of race relations.
And how about you? What do you have? How do you see for the future, based on all the craziness going on?
Crazy. Just crazy. You just don't want to listen to that. You just don't let it go.
Yeah. So compared to a lot of people are saying, like JACL and others are saying stuff like, all the roundups of people now are just like when World War II. I don't know. Is there any similarity to that, or?
Oh, I don't see any similarity. I think the roundups that they're conducting, I think the important word that everybody seems to just skim over is illegal. Illegal immigrant. Now, if they were rounding up legal immigrants, I think it'd be similar to World War II. But for me, the key word is illegal. And I guess part of that comes from my background. I was in law enforcement for almost 30 years, so to me, illegal is illegal.
All right. Any other follow-up thoughts?
Yes, I agree with that, but I can see a lot of things that are going to happen in the next maybe 20 years or so. I think I see it in terms of promising developments, especially in the world of science, and I really have great hope for that. And there's going to be new diseases that, or old diseases that defy cure, that are going to succumb to the new technology. That's my feeling, and I think it's going to happen. If you ask me what diseases, I'm talking about dementias, diseases of the mind, cancers. There are several cancers now that are really curable now, and with all that knowledge, I think mankind's got to do better. That's all.
You guys have any questions you want me to capture?
Sure. In the post-World War II era, there were two major Japanese grocery stores. One we talked about earlier was Granada Fish, and the other was Pacific Mercantile, which is Pacific Mercantile is still around.
East, the owner's there, right
So,
behind you.
what are your recollections of those two grocery stores back in the early days? I have some memories back when I was a kid, but and then this is obviously back before the Sakura Square remodeling.
Oh,
So the
yeah.
old era when basically Pacific was on, they
It's-
kind of switched spots, right? Larimer
Yeah.
was,
They were
Granada was on
on
one side,
Larimer,
Pacific was in, and then they did
now
remodel.
Lawrence, yeah.
So were they part of a central part of the Japanese community? Were they?
They were. Mr. Enai, yeah. Long time.
That area in the 1900 block of Larimer and Lawrence was the central Japanese area. The temple was there. And now, my recollection is that Pacific Mercantile was more grocery store, as you would say, grocery store, where Granada was more fish market. But I'm sure they were competing entities at the time. But other than that, I don't have any definite recollections of anything else.
I'd like to say that culturally, those of us that were, Japanese American, we've got to have rice for one, and it seems that I can remember very clearly when we were deprived of having rice at that time, and by this I mean when my wife and I. We spent one whole year doing a general surgical residency at the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky. And that's about far removed from any kind of a cultural thing that you can imagine. And we started craving Asian food. The Nisei fellows who fought during World War II did for us all, because they made it possible for us to break so-called yellow barrier. Japanese food, nobody knew anything about Asian food, and we really felt it at that time. And to this day, we appreciate every time we have the ability to go to a Japanese restaurant and enjoy that food, because it really does get into you, for you almost have to have it sometimes.
Anyone else?
How was playing with all Japanese teammates different from your high school experience? I know Dr. Hirose was an all-city player, played at the University of Colorado. George was one of the first Asians to play at DU. How was that different? Or it was just baseball is baseball?
I think baseball is just baseball, but there are definite advantages to playing on a team where you're totally comfortable with each other. I can't say that I was uncomfortable playing with my Caucasian friends when I was playing, but I remember a time when we were playing in the Metro League in Denver, and as the Denver Nisei, Beans Yamamoto would flash his classic sign of wait before you hit, and clench his fist to let us know that we have the green light to swing the bat. Well, beyond that, there were signs that went on that we spoke it in Japanese, and our opponents didn't understand. Like when Rupert Arai would steal base, he'd have that signal, but it was very blatant Japanese. You know, tell him that you care, you know, and things like that. And we had an advantage there. And one of my friends, Caucasian friends that would talk to me later said, what were you guys eating anyway? You guys seem to run like jackrabbits out there. And so there was an advantage to that. But that's the only advantage. Otherwise, the camaraderie and everything are pretty much, I think, the same.
Can he talk a little bit about the early Denver Japanese community?
Yeah, it's. I grew up close to Larimer Street. My father's office was on 21st and Larimer, and I remember the Japanese community. There was a Japanese school, and there was Japanese. There was 3 Japanese stores. There was the Nihon Shokai, which I don't remember the lady's name that ran it. This was before Granada Fish, and then there was another Japanese store run by the Kurokis. What was the name?
Kojima?
No, Japanese store. Kuroki, remember Joe Kuroki?
Kuroki's family.
Yeah, they had a store that dealt with Japanese products. And then there were several dentists in the neighborhood around Larimer Street. There was 3 dentists that I recall. There were 3 doctors' offices also. And there was a cleaners as well. And everything seemed to revolve around the Japanese school and the Japanese Methodist church and the Buddhist church. So just with having the church presence seemed to bring the Japanese community together. I never thought there was much difference between the Christian church and the Buddhist church. It seemed like they were pretty interchangeable for me, but if you really got down to the nitty-gritty, I think there was a difference that in beliefs and things like that. But the Buddhist church had a minister by the name of Reverend Tamai, and he was one person that really lived his religion. I always looked up to that man as a person who really believed in his religion, and I'd like to see that repeated everywhere. Beyond that, I just don't have too much recollection of the community.
So I think I knew one of those dentists, Dr. Sakamoto.
Sakamoto?
Sakamoto?
No, he must have been much later.
He's a Nisei guy. He just died here a few years back.
Sakamoto. Well, there was Dr. Nakamura, Dr. Hayano, and Dr. Miyamoto. Those were the three dentists that I can think of.
Any recollections early, growing up?
I think in addition to what Edie said, down in the Japanese community, there was a couple of Japanese hotels, and there was a Japanese restaurant in the 1900 block of Larner Street. I don't recall the name of it.
Yeah, Shitoha.
Huh?
Shitoha.
Stoha.
Yeah,
And I think there was a Tofuya,
yeah, Kojima.
Kojima's Tofuya. But that was primarily, the Japanese community before the war.
I remember when they were called the Mandarin on 20th Street.
Yeah, that was later. That was after the war.
Anything else?
Was that the Manchu Grill?
The Manju Grill?
Manchu.
Manju?
They had a team.
Manchu Grill was, he was a contributor to the Denver Nisei
Right.
baseball.
Right,
George Furuta.
right.
That wasn't from the Mandarin?
He owned the Mandarin and some other places, and then
He owned a restaurant in Los Angeles also.
and then went out to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
What was the
He
name
didn't
of
have-
the Mandarin?
He didn't own the Mandarin.
He didn't own the Mandarin.
No, he owned the Manchu Grill.
Yeah. But he had a restaurant in L.A. too.
Right.
So George Frugal is his name.
The Mandarin, I don't know who started that, but at one time was run by Tawny, still Tawny,
Yeah.
The Mandarin?
the Mandarin.
Any relation to the Cheyenne Chinese?
I don't think so.
Did you say Tani?
Mm-hmm.
Tani?
T-A-N-I?
Yeah.
Wasn't he the owner of the Mandarin? at one
Yeah,
time?
I think so, but there was also Japanese garages around. There were a couple of Japanese mechanical garages way before George Kuramoto's place, but there was a restaurant, a garage that Kawamura's had, and he was a whiz of a mechanic, I'll tell you that. He seemed to know how to repair things very well.
That's the one that was the Texaco station?
Well, that was George Kuramoto, but that came much, after the war started, and the relocation that came after. But Kawamura's garage was there ever since I was going to grade school. Yeah.
I know you three guys are humble guys, and you don't like really talking about yourself. But now, as you've gotten older, can you appreciate your place in history? George, you were the first Japanese player to play for DU. Art, you were the second Japanese police officer in the Denver Police Department. Dr. Hirose, you were one of the early Japanese baseball players up at the University of Colorado, and then became a prominent orthopedic surgeon. You were team doctor for the Broncos. I know I'm embarrassing all of you, but can you reflect back on that at all, or is it just stuff that you did at that point in time?
Well, I can remember my own feelings when Art became a division chief. It made me so proud to see Art being somebody like that. We really needed that in the Japanese community, Art. That's really true.
That's because I was a patient of his, and he was glad I survived.
Would it be fun for you to look at pictures back from the era when you were ball players, softball and baseball players? Because I've got some pictures here of the Denver Busei team, of the Denver Merchants, of the Denver Nisei, Bean Sport Shop. Would that be of interest to you at all? To be able to comment on? Put you on the spot here.
Is there one where they all have to be having comment?
Well, there are several pictures where they were on the same team. Yeah.
Well, Alan, you know, you've done more than your share of this kind of work. Here, I'll pass this on to you. I think I feel very strongly about what the Nisei fellows who fought during World War II did for us all, because they made it possible for us to break so-called yellow barrier. Really allowed us to do some things.
I personally I'm not in very many of these because, like I said, I only played 1 year for Beans Sports Shop and for the Denver Nisei. So I think it was a thing right after World War II that, you know, the Japanese community, it was a big thing, this baseball. The Labor Day tournaments were a big thing. And when we played in the Northern Japanese Baseball League, we'd travel to Greeley and Alt and Brighton and Fort Lupton, those places. That was a big thing. Those families used to bring bento boxes out. And it was a big event for them. You know, they were farmers 6 days a week and working hard, and Sunday was a big relief for them. Those were fun times, just traveling to go to these dirt fields, and but it was fun.
What about the Ogden tournaments?
Huh?
The Ogden tournament and the July 4th tournaments, did you have, were those really exciting times? Do you have memories of those tournaments? Was the competition pretty stiff?
Well, I don't remember 4th of July tournaments personally.
Labor Day, I think she means Labor Day.
Labor Day was the big tournaments, and we'd use 2 or 3 different fields and have these tournaments. And teams would come from Ogden, Utah, and Wyoming sometimes. And so it was fun times. They were a big event, Labor Day.
Did you only go to Fresno that one time?
I only went one time.
Yeah, that's the only time we could show our face. We went there and we lost 3 games in a row. I have to feel partly responsible. I just couldn't. I had such a sore arm that I couldn't even hardly lift my arm. And Beans insisted that I go, and I said, I'm not going to be able to throw.
Yeah, but it's a team game, so it wasn't your fault.
Well, I felt.
It's a team.
I know, but I have to blame the coaches up at CU for that. They were trying to teach me how to throw a different kind of a changeup, and that's when my arm really went bad. Yeah.
Should have been throwing more apples.
Huh?
Should have been throwing more apples.
No, it was really sore. Yeah. But knowing what I know now about this, I think it's important for youngsters to not to overdo when it comes to throwing the ball. I remember one time they asked me to pitch 2 games in a row for the Buses, and I did. I pitched 18 innings that game, and I thought, you know, my arm felt okay, so I thought, gee, I felt like a Superman. I could keep going, but you go up to CU and you find out different things. Those guys that were on the team, they could hit anything, you know, and so you always are perennially thinking about when you watch the ball games now, who's going to win. And you could almost say the team that does the hitting is going to be there, but pitching usually comes, good pitching is really hard to beat.
AKA the
You've
Rockies.
been watching the Rockies.
Well, that's part of it too, but yeah, it's really determination and
So who are the quarterbacks that played while you were working for the Broncos?
who were the
Who were the
quarterbacks?
quarterbacks when you were working
Well,
for the
Steve Tensey was the main guy, but that was an interesting experience to be a Bronco doctor. And, it told me that you don't necessarily have to be an upright citizen to play professional football. That's what it told me. Because it really opened my eyes about a lot of things in general.
Well, you know, Jim Bouton, he just died. He wrote that book, same thing.
Oh,
about
yeah?
Baseball.
Who wrote it?
Jim Bouton, pitcher for the Yankees.
Oh, yeah, Bhutan.
Paul Four, yeah.
Oh, Bhutan, yeah,
Bhutan.
yeah. Yeah,
You got to
it's,
write a book before it's all said and done.
no, I wish I could, but I'm not that good of a writer.
All right. Anything else?
Well, I read there was a newspaper in that era called the Colorado Times. It was a Japanese community newspaper that for a lot of these big tournaments there would be 3,000 or 4,000 fans lining the field. Is that a true statement, or is that?
I don't know if there was that many, but like I mentioned before, it was a big deal. Labor Day tournaments were a big deal. I don't know if there was 3,000 or 4,000, but
I think there was. I
Yeah.
really do. But I never paid attention to it, but
yeah, I never.
I think there was.
You were too busy playing to count the crowd.
Yeah.
But it was a big deal, no doubt about that.
So did you have a thought, George,
Pardon me?
about the crowds?
Yeah. I played nothing but big crowd.
So Amache had big crowds, right?
How much you had a big crowd?
So you played on the team at Amache? And so did you just play between yourselves, or did you play other teams?
Other team,
Was Ishikawa on that team?
which one?
Ishikawa.
Nishikawa. Can't.
Travis Ishikawa plays or is coaching for the Giants right now, but he did play for the Giants. His grandfather was at Amache.
Who's that? Current player?
Well,
Former player.
Travis Ishikawa is the current.
Recently retired player, Travis Ishikawa.
From the Giants.
Yeah.
his
George,
grandfather.
the teams that you played at Amache, were they just camp teams, or were you allowed to play any of the surrounding high school teams?
No, I was too young. They won't let me play. Only time they used me was I was the pitcher. That's it. I was too young. He said, "You're only 14."
So you played on the camp teams.
Camp team.
So how was that? Were there enough kids to play two teams,
Yeah.
full teams?
You're Colorado, so
All right. Anything else, you guys?
that's it for me.
All right.